CEOs, if you want more success, start managing your boards better. I see this over and over and over. There are so many opportunities, whether you have VC investors or PE investors or industry experts, it doesn't matter. Making sure that you invest the time and energy managing your board is critical, setting up those expectations. As entrepreneurs and business owners, we know that if we have a clear plan, anything becomes possible. And if you can have a clear plan, a clear process to create that plan, and a way to create clarity with your partner or spouse, you can drive to amazing heights. So we're going to talk a little bit about why this happens, and I'm going to give you 5 specific steps on what you can do to make sure that you're managing your board like a rock star. All right, so what happens is a lot of times, especially in the PE world, is we have an owner, founder, CEO that's done well, they've gone through, they've hit the ceiling, they got their exit, but they're sticking around because they want that second bite of the apple. Understood, it works great. Now this also applies with the VC world. But we end up with people with different languages, different expectations, and sometimes boards are just created. And people don't really understand what the board is accountable for. So, but they're the guys with the money, the gals with the money. It's like, ooh, we better be respectful of that. We better be concerned with that, and you should. But you have to remember that as the senior leader, you're the connection between the organization and your leader, or the organization and the board. So you're going to have to manage up to the board just as much as you're going to have to manage your leadership team, and sometimes, to be very candid, more. Now, this is where all sorts of power struggles can happen, things like that. But don't abdicate the power. Don't be an ass. But you can be very direct and candid and say, look, I want to have the most successful opportunity to be great with this. So to do this well, we're going to have to work together. And as we work together, these are the things that I'm looking for. Now, the 5 areas that I look to talk through first are, as a senior leader, being crystal clear and understanding what are the motivations of each of your board members. Now, in some cases, you'll have a fiduciary, somebody who they're just specifically, they're representing the money and they're going to keep looking at the money, and most likely they haven't been operators and that's all they're going to look at. So they aren't necessarily going to understand a lot of the nuances that you do as an entrepreneur. In other cases, you may have an industry expert that gets brought in. They could be great at knowing the industry, but again, maybe they've never been an operator. So sometimes you can find that in other ways. Now, you may end up with competing financial groups that come in there. You may be a board member yourself. You may have a co-founder that's a board member. But making sure that you're clear on what that is really important, so that you understand what are their motivations, who are they accountable to, and what are they accountable for. That starts, because then you can start to define what success is going to look like for each one of them. And once you define that success, for your board members, it's going to make it easy. Well, I won't say easy, but it'll make it easier. All right, so then the next step is to make sure you're crystal clear on the expectations. Once you understand their motivations, cool. Understand what are their expectations of you. Now, this is not a one-way street. This is going to be an expectations then, or what are your expectations of them? Now, some board members might not like this, but that's okay. Making sure that you have that cadence and that comfort level. You are on equal footing with these people. They may have the money and they may be the people who are the big cheeses, but you're the one who's driving the asset. You're the one who's investing in the asset. And making sure that you talk to them and have some conversations around that is going to be important, so that you understand what their expectations are and they can understand what your expectations are. Now, if this is the kind of thing that you're sort of new to and you're trying to learn a language, or there's other questions, maybe you need some outside help, you may need some coaching, who knows what that is. But getting that so that you make sure you're set to be a rock star with your board, very, very important. Okay, the next thing is you want to go through and you want to define how are you going to communicate with who on this board can communicate with the organization, with people within the organization. Now, they have the right to do that, but you have the right to help manage how that's going to happen. I work with one organization, and we just went through, and we're in a complete, this is part of why this is top of mind, is they've had the board, they were having financial troubles, that's why they brought me in, working with CEO, but they have an activist investor that has a huge chunk of the company. And they have people all the time reaching out to everybody throughout the whole organization. But they figured out that in 1 month, we had well over 100 hours that was invested responding or engaging with meetings and replying to this activist investor. And it ended up being counterproductive. They're losing control of the narrative, things are swirling, there's all these concerns, all this back channeling, all this shit that's going on, and oh my God. So as soon as I heard this, I had a conversation with the CEO, and the CEO just shut it down. Let alone the fact that 100 hours of productivity from the senior leadership team worrying about this and answering questions at random. Now, the equity firm 100% has the right to get answers. They do, and they should. But how you're managing that and how you're managing that communication, so who is going to be the person they're talking to is important. Now, in another case I'm working with, an organization a little bit larger, they have owner-founder, and there's a fair amount of challenges and dysfunction within the team. And they're working on this, but there is some legacy, brain damage, a bunch of people are dealing with different things, and they end up having people go sometimes behind their back to talk to people about the board. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't have the right to do that, but making sure that we lay it all out in front of everybody is going to be important, because sometimes it ends up being very, very counterproductive because people aren't always hearing the entire story, so it ends up, we end up all over the place. And the reality is what the actual outcomes of that are usually end up being much, much more counterproductive. Now, the next thing we're doing is we want to define what are the reporting metrics, communication, and cadence for that communication. This is something that most, particularly if people are a primary advisor or they're primary holder of the equity, they're going to be very candid. We need these financial metrics, we need this type of thing, that type of thing on a regular basis. And that makes perfect sense. So, but making sure that you're clear with it, and if there's other things, what is the time frame, what are the different pieces, and then, but making sure that you and your board are on the same page with it. And if there's other pieces in there, it's important. Now, one area that we don't talk a lot about, and I think is absolutely critical, and there's opportunities all over the place, is making sure that the board is completely aware of what is a crystal clear vision of where we're going. And the number of times I work with senior leaders who aren't really clear, yeah, we're moving forward. Okay, that's great, but I want to know where we're going. I want to know why we're going there, and I want to know why are we choosing to go after these in these certain areas. And then I want to know how are we achieving that. And that's where you break down into quarterly objectives, quarterly rocks, okras, whatever you want to call it, but creating some sort of strategic plan on how we're going to go after that vision. Now, this is an area that I see opportunities over and over and over and over, where we may end up with fiduciaries, we may end up with industry experts, we may end up with somebody who's financially on the board, but we may not necessarily always have a true operator on the board. Somebody who can come in and say, no, boys, girls, let's talk about this. We're getting in our own way. How do we start getting to those things? Somebody who's been an operator and gets in the weeds. And this is something that I help with immensely. And you want to talk about board positions, let me know when we talk about it. The last thing is going to be, how is each member of the board contributing to achieve that vision? How are they contributing to that? So if it's an industry expert, great. I'm working with a much larger organization, publicly traded, and we're in the process of looking at some pretty major acquisitions. You know, the 10-figure range acquisitions, which is for the mid-market is a pretty good size acquisition. And being able to come together on those, now these are getting brought to them by some of their board members because the board members are industry experts that know the space. They also have an awareness of what the board is needing, and they can help lean on each other with that. But when we talk about this, a lot of times the CEO seems to think that, oh no, the board's in charge and I just have to take orders from that. I think that's bullshit. I think the CEO needs to make sure that they build a board that's crystal clear on where we're going, and then actually recruits the board to help achieve those goals. And I would be very blunt, how, hey, board member, miss, tell me, how are you gonna help us achieve this goal? All right, when will it be done? How will we measure it? Through the same exact processes that you do as a CEO with your leadership team, or what you should be doing. But when you start to do this, the dynamics are going to change. But it's also, you're going to have some psychology around this that lets the board feel more at ease. It's like, oh, whoa, she knows what she's doing, man. We can step away. We got this. How can we help her be successful rather than, oh, we're worrying, digging in, worrying about all sorts of other stuff that's not really important. So, long story short, you want to be more successful, you want to be more efficient with your time, you want to recruit absolute badasses to help you achieve your vision. Well, make sure you manage your board. Hopefully you found some value with this. If you got any questions, please don't be afraid of reaching out. Keep smiling.